But you can send a comment with that, or reach out one.
Days for all stuff is Tuesday, and they will be next week. Fourth on Monday. It'll be crazy.
It was something about, you might get possessed up Friday night. It's some kind, it's just some. I'll call our 15th board meeting to order. Is that, not having that many this month, it's third, isn't it? Three-time board meeting. Brian, welcome everyone here tonight. Big crowd, that's like, I guess everybody's tired of coming to board meetings. Larry, do you look forward to this at your house, right? All of us. Got it. Homemade ice cream, grill out steaks, ribeyes. Anyway, we'll be there. Brian, would you mind leading us in a prayer, please?
Ask about, I guess, Lord Jesus, we thank you for today. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, Lord. Ask you to be with us. Everything we do and say here tonight, Lord, let it be done to your will. We thank you for all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
All right, this time would you stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this time I need a motion to adopt the meeting agenda.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll move on to the information items with Dr. Gaines.
Okay, board members, I have a couple of gifts I want to bring to you to get these through. On the 9th of June, I received an email from Anthony Grosh regarding a gift from Freeman Forest. The amount of $50 is to be used for the school's beta club. I accepted this gift on June 9 due to its value being $5,000 or less. That's why it's an information item tonight per board policy 8220. Also, from Anthony Grosh, Northeastern Randolph Middle School on the 21st of June, received notice of another gift from Point South Animal Hospital, amount of $50. Again, the money is to be used for the beta club at the school. I accepted this gift on June 21. Copy of the email is included as well. And it's an information item due to being $5,000 or less per board policy 8220. So that's what I bring to you tonight.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gainey. We'll move on to finance with Todd.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, board members. So tonight we'll go over the fourth quarter update to end the 21-22 school year. Just keep in mind that these numbers are preliminary, so these are the numbers as of right now or as of tomorrow, so to speak, but unaudited at this point, so things will fluctuate a little bit, but this will give you a pretty good picture. All right, so basically, we're just going to hit every fund, state, federal, capital outlay, school nutrition, AT tax budget, and the current expense budget. And of course, we'll look at Fund 2 and Fund 8 combined in that current expense budget. All right, so we'll start with the state. So the final allotments for the state budget came in at $109,684,860. So when you compare that to last year's final allotments, they're actually a little bit less by about $500,000. But there's a reason for that, because normally you would think they would be more than last year's with salary increases and benefit increases. And they would have been, but if you recall last year, we had CRF funding in the state budget last year, coronavirus relief money. And so to the tune of about $3.4 million. So basically, our state allotments really did go up. It's just we didn't have that CRF funding in this year's budget, that $3.4 million. We spent all of that last year. So currently this year, 37 individual programs in the state budget. 31 of those are dollar allotments, and there are 6 position allotments in that budget. I bring that to your attention just to say that just a few years ago in 18-19, we had 32 separate programs. So we've increased by 5 programs. And the trend is in the state budget is towards more restrictive programs, which limits our flexibility a little bit. So a good example is, in a state allotment or state program that you can pay several different types of positions out of, that you might could do supplies and materials out of it. The trend is going a little bit more towards you can only pay a certain type of position out of this allotment. School psychologists would be a good example. They pulled some funding out of our 007 allotment, which can pay for guidance, social workers, nurses, psychologists, and they pulled some of that funding and put it in a separate funding just specifically for psychologists that you can't really do anything, you can't move money in or out of that program for the most part. So anyway, that's I don't think it's a good thing for school systems, but it is what it is. So just bringing that to your attention.
All right, good job.
Any questions?
Short slip.
Internet said it's over.
Yeah. Yeah. We ran out of money. Okay, all right, you can go on. Okay, yeah. Okay, the next slide on the state budget, just wanted to call out a couple programs. We typically take a look at the main EC, main exceptional children program is 032 in the state budget. That allotment this year was $9,048,969. I've showed you these numbers before, how that breaks down, and it's typically year after year, it's like this. Basically, of that $9 million allotment, $8.8 million is spent on salaries, benefits, and contracted services in the EC program, leaving very little money for their supplies, their equipment, staff development needs. So that's literally over 97% of that budget, and that's been historically what we're looking at. So, saying, we still need more state money in that EC budget. It doesn't cover all of our needs for sure. State transportation budget, we'll talk a little bit more about this later. The allotment this year of $5,476,504. But as you see a couple of bullets down there, that $5.4 million actually includes $250,000 that I transferred in from near the end of the year from other state sources, because I knew we were going to be so short of state transportation. But that $5.4 million breaks down between salaries and benefits for drivers and mechanics, $3.2 million, contract transportation, $365,000. Fuel just from the state budget, $840,868, and then everything else, tires, oil, supplies, etc., a little over $1 million. We'll talk a little bit about additional local expenses incurred because that didn't cover all of our yellow bus transportation. Okay. So we'll switch gears to the federal budget. 30 individual programs this year. So that's about twice as many as it was pre-COVID. Total allotments for those 30 programs, $63.7 million. I say 11 regular programs, I should say 11 pre-COVID programs. Those allotments total a little over $12 million. And then the other 19 programs were all COVID-related programs that total $51.7 million. And then once again, like I kind of described in the state budget, the majority of those COVID programs have a very specific use. So the three big ones, ESSER 1, 2, and 3. ESSER 1 and 2, ERCs 163 and 171, you've heard me talk about those for the last couple of years. So basically, we're pretty much done with those. We've depleted those. It might be a little bit of 163 carryover, a few $1,000s, but we'll take care of that in the fall. ESSER 3 is the big one that's remaining, ERC 181. We'll carry forward about $29.6 million in that program. All the other ESSER programs that will be carrying forward are more specific, very limited what you can use it for, they're very detailed. Then just two non-ESSER programs, just want to bring to your attention. The main EC program in the federal budget is Program 60. That allotment this year was $4.6 million. And then, of course, Title I is the other main allotment, Program 50. That allotment was $4.9 million. So you can see, out of that $12 million in your regular program, about $9.6 million is for those two alone. The other ones include some CTE money and some other small allotments. Okay, capital outlay budget. I'm going to kind of show you this one in two different parts. I think this is what I did last year, so it'll make a little bit more sense. Because the numbers look really inflated on one side. And there's a reason for that. So we started the year with the beginning budget for capital outlay was $3,109,071. So the final budget comes in at $9,379,071. So we're like, okay, where did this extra $6.2 million come from? So three different reasons. If you remember back in the fall, we transferred $1.4 million from current expense fund balance over to capital outlay. So that increased the capital outlay budget by $1.4 million. For the Trinity Middle School project, we still are paying invoices, or we have paid some invoices this year on that project. Still have not paid that one out totally because they're not quite finished with everything that they need to do per the contract. So I just budgeted $4 million this year. Didn't spend $4 million this year, but I budgeted $4 million, so that increased the budget at that point. And then every year, we have to book the yellow bus lease purchase program. That's DPI makes these payments. This is not our money. This year, I booked $870,000 for DPI to make those payments. We just have to show it on our general budget. So those three things, basically, those three items were due to or caused the increase in the budget. So when you look at the revenues, including those items, you've got $7.1 million in revenue and $5.5 million in expenses. All right, now I'm going to show you a truer picture, which just focuses on our money. So we're going to exclude the Trinity Middle School project, and we're going to exclude the yellow bus payments. So let's just look at what truly is our money. Final budget comes in at $4,509,071. When we look at the revenues, true revenues, our money, year-to-date revenues were $4.8 million. So those came in $352,000 over budget. Year-to-date expenses came in at $3.3 million, or $1.1 million under budget, okay? So the combination of those two numbers, revenues in excess of expenditures by $1.5 million. All right, so you might think, well, why did you not spend $1.5 million in capital outlay? Well, we have a reason for that. Multiple projects in progress, mainly that are related to that $1.4 million transfer. So think about your HVAC, the bulk of that were HVAC projects. So we have multiple projects that are in progress, but we haven't paid those out yet. We'll pay them out in 22, 23 when they're finished. So basically that $1.5 million is going to roll back into fund balance. We'll reallocate it out next year to pay when the projects are done. Something else that increased revenue would be an insurance settlement, or maybe one or two insurance settlements. So that revenue came in $182,000 on some damage from some storm damage that happened last year. And then we had a state athletic grant that came in, and we booked it in capital outlay, $134,000, and that'll be for some school board upgrades. And we haven't spent any of that money yet. That'll be this coming year.
Board members, that state athletic grant We received that, March, I guess it was, a little bit before spring break, and Dale sent off our formal request with the quotes today to DPI. We work with every high school and middle school to try to, knowing how it feels to sit in the seat at one of those principals and all of a sudden have a school board go out and now you have to replace it and you weren't planning on spending that money. That was something we thought we could do. We first started with the high schools, and based on the high schools' needs, we were able to go down into the middle schools. So looking forward to getting our response back from DPI so we can start moving on that. And what we did do is said every quote had to include installation, because our guys, we don't have the manpower to install with what's going on in the summer. So excited for that. Dale did a great job with all that, and waiting for our response from DPI. They know what's coming, because we sent them an example of what we were doing a while back. So hopefully you'll start seeing some things happen where you might know a school board's not working. I could think of 3 high schools right now, I think, where school boards aren't working. And we did gym or outside fields. We asked what their needs were.
So, once again, this slide right here shows you what our real money looks like, even though the previous slide is what will be presented in the audit, because we have to book all those other transactions, even though it's not our money. Okay, so school nutrition. So the final budget, $10,627,500, same as the original budget. The budget didn't change. Year-to-date expenses, $8.6 million. That's $1.9 million under budget. Year-to-date revenue, $11.6 million. That's a little over $1 million over budget. So when you combine the two numbers, revenues in excess of expenses, $2,973,000. So the differences in revenue and expenses are due to higher USDA reimbursement rate for meals. That's the bulk of it. We did receive some funding for supply chain issues, supply chain assistance. We haven't spent that money yet. We do plan to spend that money on some food items next year. And then another big player, decrease in labor expense due to number of vacancies. Now, that's not to say that Kelly didn't try to fill her vacancies or didn't fill her vacancies, but a lot of subs were used during the year, a little bit lower cost there sometimes. I know some of her staff at the central office filled in from time to time, and then also she worked her employees really hard. That we, probably not a good thing to have to continue to do that if we can avoid it. So overall, not a good situation for Kelly, but it did lead to lower labor costs. Okay. ET tax budget.
Can I ask you a question right quick?
Yes.
How about equipment needs for school nutrition?
That all goes, that,
Do we have anything needed right now, or are there some things that we're working on?
You probably let Kelly answer that question if you want to.
We're replacing the rest of the dining room tables, that they don't have the attached stools, so we were hoping to get those in June, but it looks like it's gonna be July. So that's a pretty big cost that we're waiting on. Compressors are a big issue right now. 6 schools, I think, have freezers and coolers down right now. So we're starting to get those in, but they're telling us like 10-week lead times. As stuff breaks and we can't fix it, and the defense department can't fix it, then we're replacing that too.
Can other money be used in school nutrition, for instance, ESSER 3? For stuff like that?
well, if you start getting outside, the problem is, well, she's got the revenue, the funding to do it. But our problem is, it's just like with anything else. I sat down in the gym the last week of school and the air was out, and the part had been ordered weeks in advance, prior to that, or weeks prior to that. You want to stay in your child nutrition budget and use, because that's an enterprise self-funding program. So you want to stay in that, but the funding's not the issue is the supply.
Okay.
So, and what I have been very, watching, has been a very methodical come across the county process. Those chair or tables that Kelly's speaking to, it seems like you just gradually see them taking away the ones with the separate chair and the fold up ones with the stool. So really proud of what's happened. That's been going on, I don't know how many years now, Kelly, but those aren't cheap, and she's gradually come across I'd say the county, come across the school system replacing those. So that seems like the staff really likes those. It's easy cleanup, easier to clean up the cafeteria, is that correct, Kelly? Because they can fold them up and having all the loose chairs. But we want to stay inside the, it's not a funding issue. If we get to that, then we'll have to look at some things.
Beyond
That fund has been managed very well for years, even prior to my time.
Yeah, beyond that, I'm not sure that anything like that would fit into the ESSER money. You know, in the last couple of years, there has been some specific ESSER money just for child nutrition for a couple of different things. But I think it would be a stretch trying to put that into ESSER 3 or something.
And the ESSER 3 money, it seems like as we've gone from 1 to 2 to 3, the rules have become tighter than it was when it first came out. So that's something else that's, and I see Beth shaking her, or looking at me, she's not shaking her head, but she knows what I'm referencing there.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. AG tax. So start of the year, $2,492,300 for the budget. Final budget was $2,892,300. Year-to-date expenses, $2,843,869, which was $48,000 under budget. Year-to-date revenues came in at $2.9 million, a little over budget by $43,000. So once again, those two numbers, revenues in excess of expenses, $92,127. So we're just right there on target for the most part. The revenue does include, I did appropriate $400,000 in fund balance in the AT tax budget to cover some additional expenditures. For the past few years, the council has put out some extra funding for all the schools. They've done some extra per ADM allotments. And then, of course, they typically will have special requests that they fund throughout the year for schools. So they are spending money, so that's a good thing for those schools in that area. All right, current expense. So a couple slides on current expense, and once again, we're going to look at Fund 2 and Fund 8 combined, but I'll separate out the budget figures here. So we started the year, the beginning budget for Fund 2 was $22.6 million. Fund 8 was $2.9 million, or a total of $25.596. Final budget, $24.3 on the Fund 2 side. Fund 8 was $6.2 for a total of $30,529,856. So between the two budgets, they increased $4,933,500. So there's about 6 reasons for that. Increase in the budget. So additional revenues of $1.2 million came in, so that was good. A lot of that was indirect costs from federal programs. Emergency connectivity funding. So if you remember, Sheena had applied for this back during the school year, and we purchased, we received Chromebooks and hotspots to the tune of about $1.4 million worth of that equipment. So once again, just like the construction project, we didn't pay for this, but we still had to book it on our general ledger, okay, just like the construction project. So I booked it in the Fund 8, so that increased the budget $1.4 million, $54,368. Now, then the fund, once again, the fund balance transfer to capital outlay. So you might say, well, wait a minute, the $1.4 million increased the capital outlay budget. Why did it increase the current expense budget? Well, it increased both because we had to appropriate the money in current expense from the fund balance. So that increased the current expense budget so that we could write a check out of current expense and deposit it in the capital outlay. So it actually increased both budgets, okay? So there's $1.4 million. Driver's education, fund balance appropriation, those are the student fees. So every year, I budget whatever was rolled over from the year before. So the $145,726 is what I budgeted, put back in the budget back in the fall. So that's what they had left over from last year. So I'll do the same thing every year. The number fluctuates a little bit, but that's a normal occurrence. And then Fund 8, fund balance appropriation of $439,000 to help cover some connectivity. And then a Fund 2 fund balance appropriation of $250,000. And I feel pretty good about not spending any of that money, but just wanted to budget it just to cover some expenses if needed. And then the last slide, when we look at the actual expenses in both budgets combined. Year-to-date, $30,120,582, so that came in $409,000 under budget. Year-to-date revenues actually came in a little under $30.3 million, so $134,740 under budget. Combination of those two numbers, revenues in excess of expenses by $274,534. Okay, so once again, we'll have some additional revenues come in. We always do. That'll get booked into June. They'll come in July. Auditors are booking in June. We could have some payables that come in July that get booked into June too. Hopefully those will offset. So that's why I feel pretty good about not using any of that $250,000, and hopefully we won't use any of the other $439 either. Just wanted to bring to your attention a few areas in the current expense budget. Energy expense, we always talk about that. So this year we finished the year at $3.3 million in energy expense. That was a little bit under budget. Transportation. So on the local side of transportation, we spent $952,000 this year. A lot of that was for Yellow Bus. The majority of that was for Yellow Bus. So if you think about, and I don't have my final numbers yet because I'd have to do a little digging to get some exact numbers, but I know at the end of the year, before I started covering our negatives in the budget, we were about $510,000 short in state transportation. Now, remember I said I moved $250,000 from another state source into state transportation, so that's $760,000 right there in state transportation, in transportation for Yellow Buses, that we didn't have the money in state allotment. So that is a continued concern moving forward. The last couple of years, we didn't experience that problem because we were on a reduced schedule. Either March, everybody went home, we saved money there, and then we had the AB days. And so, but now we're kind of back to that issue with state transportation. And, you know, you've heard Dr. Gaines say we're a large county. We don't have the population like some of the larger school systems, but we have the square miles like the larger school systems. And we still have to run buses and we have to make stops, even if we don't have the number of kids. So anyway, just letting you know that that's going to be a concern moving forward. We'll get some of that money back in the state allotment next year because we spend it in local, and there is a formula that puts some of that money back. It's not dollar for dollar, but we'll get some of it back. So we'll stay tuned for that. A couple other things I wanted to bring to your attention. So the NC pre-K expense. So those are our teachers and our teacher assistants. A little bit of classroom expense for those NC pre-K programs that are in our elementary schools or in some of our elementary schools. So I put this up there to say that this year we spent $795,000 for that personnel, and like I said, a little bit of classroom expense money, supply money. That reimbursement rate from the state, actually the reimbursement rate from the state's less than this, but $504 is what the local partnership reimburses us per child per month. That revenue this year totaled about $745,000. So you see, we're short. Now, we did have some money that came in last year that came from the state through the partnership. That was for some, it had some COVID reasons behind it, and we were able to use it however we wanted to. I just rolled it in the fund balance because I knew as salaries and benefits keep increasing for personnel, I knew that we were going to use this. I'm saying all this to say that $504 rate, which is higher than the state rate, the local partnership does something to combine some slots and it gives a little bit higher rate, because I think the state rate is still $460 something or somewhere in there. That is woefully short of what salaries and benefits. Dr. Gaines said, he made a comment today, he thinks that 504 rate has been the same rate since he's been here. Now, since he's been here, what kind of increase has there been for teacher salaries and benefits?
It has, and the NC pre-K issue parallels the EC issue. All the money we're getting in EC, because EC 9 years later is still one of the main three concerns along with transportation and technology, but most of the money in EC is spent on personnel. There's very little left for non-personnel expenses, and the same thing with NC Pre-K. Almost everything we get has to go to cover the teaching positions and the staff positions with TAs and remember, our pre-K classes are blended. So we're only covering the non-EC pre-K positions. So that's the concern. You know, you're hearing a lot out there about pre-K and EC, but here we are, I mean, I don't have anything else to compare it to, but this is the end of year 9 for me, and this has been a problem every year, a concern every year. So that's got to change. It has been $504 per kid per month for NC Pre-K my whole time here.
Yeah, and Dr. Danny brought up a good point about the blended classrooms, because a few years ago, I did a little calculation and said, okay, well, what if because when we blend the classrooms, then Brooke funds some of the staff with DC money, and then I fund some of the staff with the partnership money. So I said, well, what if we weren't blended? And we had the same number of kids, but they were all in NC Pre-K classes with NC Pre-K funding without Brooke's help. We would come up a lot shorter than we are now. And so in other words, when we blend the classes, and we've gotten, it actually has put a little bit more pressure on Brooke's budget from the EC standpoint, because when we blend the classes, she's probably picking up more than her fair share. And you know, it ends up benefiting the NC Pre-K program in terms of money, but if we were standalone in NC Pre-K, we would be even further in the hole. Wasn't as worried about this year, because like I said, we did have some extra funding last year that I just rolled into fund balance, and it went to help cover that deficit, but that was kind of a one-time deal. So anyway, just something to think about, and you know, that rate, I'm not sure why that hasn't been addressed, but
You said 504 per month,
Per child per month.
So how many kids do we have in NC Pre-K then?
What is that?
what is it, I got it on my computer, 138 maybe?
But remember, that's for non-EC.
It's some, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, this would be not EC. If you divide it, say 745,000 divided by 10 is 74,500. 74,500 divided by 504, that would be about how many kids we have. We'll say so.
Okay.
I'd say 269, 504, but I have.
But that's EC too.
That's easy,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine.
that's-
269.
I'll look when I get back.
That's fine,
Yeah.
that's fine.
It's just it's a growing concern, and you hear a lot out there about pre-K, but pre-K expansion is gonna need some funding to do it.
Because right now, how many schools do we have the pre-K at?
Six, I think.
6 of them.
Southmont, Ramsey, Liberty, Tabernacle, Level Cross, and
Ramsey would have one maybe.
Ramsey does, yeah, 6 sites.
And the number of students vary, some of them have more than one classroom.
Right.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, just wanted to bring that to y'all's attention. We haven't talked about that too much over the years. And then likewise, little different. So school nurse funding initiative expense. So three nurses plus their local supplement. I kind of put everything into this category. 235,463 this year. So that's a program that's been in place. Edwina probably knows how long that's been in place. It's been in place for 5 or 6 years at least, maybe longer. But we get $150,000 per year for that to help cover 3 nurses. Is even in the first year, back when salaries were lower and benefits were lower, it didn't fully cover the 3 nurses, but you know, it was pretty close. And we're thankful for that program, but you see how the salary and benefits have grown. So that's just, you know, like I said, I'm not saying there's anything we can do about that, but I just want to bring it to your attention that, you know, it just does put a little bit more pressure on the local budget, but we need as many nurses as we can get, so we are thankful for that $150,000 that goes towards that. And then ROTC expense this year, and actually this is down a little bit, because I know we've had some vacancies in the ROTC program, but $384,420. We get reimbursed from the federal government for some of that. It doesn't cover the full cost of it, but just wanted to bring those items to your attention, because they're either in the Fund 2 or the Fund 8 budget. But basically, that's, I think that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
Board members, I just want to capture a couple of things. Transportation, EC, and technology continue to be big issues for us. We got a little relief this year. Shanna Creech and her staff did a great job. Todd was referencing the emergency connectivity funds. We had 800 Chromebooks one time, and then 2,500 the second time. That was in January. I say, thank goodness someone bothered to do the application, because a lot of times, and there was 600 Chromebooks came with the first 800. So we did get some relief there, but just some neat things going on with management of funds and child nutrition. We've referenced that. That is in good shape as well. And I wanted to go back to the athletic facility money as well. Dale asked for quotes, so the schools sent when they got the quotes. The school, they sent those. We didn't engage in that. We asked them for 2 quotes for each one they needed to replace. So they had some, obviously we're looking at 2 quotes in which we go with the lower quote, but those quotes came from them, not us. So excited about that, to be able to do what we can for the high schools and middle schools.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Good evening, board members. Tonight I bring to you the student assignment report for the 4th quarter, last one for this year. And so I just want to, we've talked about this I think a couple of times this year, so I just want to share some highlights. The enrollment number, please note that enrollment number per school is a reflection on the last day of school, so it was the number of students enrolled as of June the 8th, except for the early college, that reflects May the 20th, since that was their last school day. And I will own my typo. If you look at the bottom, we just talked about pre-K. There are 6 schools there. You can see those pre-K numbers. For some reason, the pre-K staff must have 88 days in June that they can work. So please, I apologize for my sticky fingers that day. But moving forward, the other thing I just want to bring your attention to is I'm going to go across the bottom for the district numbers. We have 1,048 students that are currently attending schools in our district that is not their home domiciled school. This year we have released 411 students. We have admitted 365 students. Will give us a net for the school year of -46. Last year at this time that number was -50, so we did shave that off just a little bit. That number in 14-15 was -153, so it's come down quite a bit. It has been as low in January of the 18-19 school year as -10. We ended that school year at -25. So I did do a little bit of research. From 17-18 to 21-22, except for that 18-19 year, which is a little bit of an anomaly, we've stayed right there at that -47 to -3 range. We're sort of plateaued at that number. Obviously, we want that number as close to 0 as we can get it, but that seems to be where we've been the last several years. Do you have any questions about the 4th quarter student assignment report?
Well, the virtual academy actually, I know as things settle, they're locked in? Are they locked in once they're there? Or?
Once they're there, they sign an agreement to stay the whole year. Yes. Yes.
So do you think like next year will it fall off, or can you tell? Or?
Well, talking to Kathy the other day, and we were talking, and looks like we're planning on about 180 right now. We opened the year this past year 189, I think it was where the last number I had before school started. So
That's good.
Looks pretty consistent. So, but once they say they're coming, they sign an agreement that they're there for the whole year. We can't have going back and forth. There's just, that will be a staffing nightmare, particularly at the elementary levels with the K-3 class size rules that are in place. It would just be.
Actually, that went pretty smoothly, didn't it? I mean, for
It would provide another option for kids.
I mean, actually, yeah.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks. Okay, at this time, we need a motion to approve the consent items, and Todd, you have something?
Yeah, I had a comment and question about the curriculum and instruction, number 4, the contract for curriculum associates reading and math resources for grade 6 to 8. Aren't we currently using iReady in our school system?
Yes, we've been using, I think it was the last meeting in June, hold on, I can tell you, of 2019. Yes, June 27, 2019. The board at that time approved using iReady reading and math for grades 6 through 8. Prior to that, Mr. Cutler, we had done some piloting with it at Uward Ridge, which I want to say the first, it was at least the year before that. We have some elementary schools, not many, but there are some elementary schools that use reading or math, and it's only a handful, and they pay for that with their Title I money. So that's not part of this contract. This is the across the board middle grade 6-8, and it provides a diagnostic for kids in reading and math, and we can look at where they are and their goals and their progress, and so we've been using that. This will be our, what would that be, 1920?
It'll be 3 years. This will be our
Fourth year.
And also, this isn't a state approved anyway.
You know, I don't know, the problem with a lot of the state stuff is they've even gotten out, they've removed themselves, in my opinion, now this is from even engaging much in the textbook. I can't remember what we called it back when they would say these textbooks are, I know it wasn't sanctioned, but kind of supported by the state. But, you know, there's, I counted today, there are 19 school systems without just Kathy pulling it today, and there's 19 systems that we found to do use it, and several in our zone. There's some use of it in Davidson, Rockingham, I think Stokes and Surrey, Thomasville, you know, several, you know, school systems in our region. That's not to say it grabs, that's not saying that 19 list is exhaustive, you know, whole number, but that's what we found this afternoon.
There's a lot that's using across our country too.
We have to have something. You know, we have to, you can't just, you know, the thing that I struggle with as a principal, at a middle school and a high school principal. You know, middle school, the struggle wasn't, what I loved about middle school was everybody was tested. What I struggle with as a high school principal is not everybody was tested. Even in the days when I was a high school principal, we had 10 EOCs. That still only grabbed about 40% of my 2,600 students. And so it was very hard, but you need some kind of diagnostic to see where kids are along the way, because that if you wait to the end of the year, then everything is, I mean, you've waited too long. We can catch some things with the diagnostic assessments throughout the year. So if as a middle school principal, I didn't have anything like this. As a high school principal, we created our own benchmark early on, and then the system I was in engaged in a benchmark. But originally, my teachers got together and wrote benchmark assessments, and we did it inside the building. I've always felt, you know, waiting to the end of the year is, you know, I hear people talk about, you know, I just say it's too late. They put terms on it about waiting to the end. It's too late. You got to know what's going on with children along the way. Who knows, you find something going on in the first semester, and you can address it, and they may be a totally different performance level in the spring, or maybe the confidence level. I've always thought a big thing about school. I was a high school math teacher, and I always worked hard to keep children from losing their confidence, because I felt like, particularly in math, if they lost it, it was hard to get it back. Math became a very difficult struggle the rest of the way, because of where they knew math might be taken at the high school level. So that's maybe more than, but this has always been a big deal to me. I mean, I guess it was probably the spring of '05 when I called 3 department chairs in at the high school principal office, and I said, we've got to do something benchmark-wise, diagnostic-wise along the way to see what's going on with children. And we had short assessments, we embedded questions that were in regular tests, so I think you have to do something, or you find out in June that you may have lost a kid, and you're not sure when you lost them. And I don't mean lost as, but lost their buy-in to school, or didn't provide them with the strategies, interventions they needed along the way.
In this day and time, anything, when you see something about curriculum, the buzzword or the thing that people talk about the most is CRT. Well, I know I did some research on this today. There is nothing associated with CRT with this contract or with the iReady. And I know we've said on this board countless times, if there was anything that we thought or was brought to our attention specifically about CRT, we would address it. And we would not support it if that's what this curriculum did. So I just wanted to put that out there for people, to know that this board wouldn't support it if that what was.
So basically, in a nutshell, we use this if little Gary was struggling in the first 9 weeks with math or something in school, we might could catch it here where he's failing and save him from when he got to the next level. Maybe save him where you wouldn't lose him along the way.
I think yes, that's right. But we want everybody reaching their potential. And people get caught up in growth, but we should be getting everybody. Academic growth should be happening for everybody. My first school, we had kids making, back in those days, it was only level 1, 2, 3, 4. And we had plenty of kids making level 4, but they weren't growing inside of level 4. And in fact, some of them were getting very close to being a level 3. And, but we had to work at that with making sure our parents understood while we were, so it's everybody, Mr. Cook, it's everybody from where they are moving them forward, trying to move them forward.
Real quickly, I'll tell you a quick story. When Travis was in middle school, it won't take long. It's a good story though.
Okay.
Travis is one of those kids that was lost in middle school math, okay? And when he got to high school, he just never got it in middle school. Thank God he was the principal, he was struggling. And, but middle school's tough. It's very tough. But when he got to high school, what made me think of this, the teacher stopped by my store the other day. Mr. High, I'll never forget it. He took an interest in Travis. And extra time, and he pulled that potential out of Travis. And he took that extra time and he called him up. And I'll never forget what an impact he made in the 9th grade.
And he worked in middle school before he went to high school.
He did. He worked in middle school. He knew exactly. And he made such a difference. He called him up, and he mentioned the other day, so I'll never forget it, because that kid was struggling, and I said, I'll never forget you. You pulled him out. But that was cool. All right. So, if any more comments or anything else, I ask for a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, we're gonna move on to the action items with Dr. Gandy.
Okay, board members, we bring this every year. I don't think this is a decision I make in my office, because this is a big role you play in governance. But they have an action center at the School Board Association, and every year, they started this years ago. Mr. Cutler and I remember when it first came on. It's basically another avenue for lobbying to help. They try to help school boards, and they talk about local bills, and they talk about different bills they work with. You've asked me questions in the past about what I felt back then. I think we get a lot of good services from School Board Association, but I'll leave that in your hands on this. It's the same rate we're a member of the Action Center group last year, and it's the same rate as it was last year, $5,000. So at this point, I'll step back and I'll follow your lead on this, what you as the board, because this is a governance issue, and it's work they try to do in addition to their regular work with the school board issues throughout the year. So I'll turn that over to you, Mr. Cook.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Todd this afternoon. I know Todd, he was more familiar with any of us than, in the past, because he worked real close to him. And I think last year, we when we were lead on, or year before, and, give them a chance, because we hadn't had it in the last few years. I'm gonna let you answer that question, if you will, what I asked you earlier, because Todd gave a great answer, and he did, he just hit it, he just, bam, he nailed it. So answer that question when I asked you this afternoon.
Well, if you look at the benefits in this letter, it hasn't changed for several years. I mean, it's the same things on there. And I learned a lot about the people down in North Carolina School Board Association. They're great. I mean, led by Liam Winter. They're a good group of people. But I also found out where they were when we needed help dealing with the mask and stuff. And they weren't there.
Nope.
They were not there.
Back us up.
They didn't want to touch that at all.
They make a video about that, didn't they?
That's right, yeah. So, I would not support this at all.
I like that answer, that was just, you nailed it. Because we were reaching out for, all sorts of help, and once no one would help us. So with that being said, I'm gonna ask for a motion that we decline the North Carolina School Board's action center.
Before
Do we do it right? You want
Does that put you in bad positions for us with other superintendents around the state or anything?
No, and we have a great relationship with Christine Sheaf with the policies. We engage in their policy service, and it's great. We don't have the manpower, and Elizabeth works closely with me, we would never be able to keep up with the board policy. And, excuse me, before I say Elizabeth, I'm not discounting you, Beverly works a lot with me too, on the policy stuff. That's our big benefit. Yeah, this would not impact.
Okay.
Our biggest thing with them right now is, and has been for years, is the policy.
This is totally separate from just the regular
Yeah.
association fee.
All right. So we need a motion to decline North Carolina School Board Action Center. Or not do it this year.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So what do we say, $5,000?
So we get more sure.
With that 1.5 million?
Okay, this time we're gonna move on to Kathy Waddell.
Good evening, school board members. Tonight I bring to you our school district's academically, intellectually gifted, what we refer to as AIG in our district, plan for the 2022-2025 school year. As I'm sure you already know, legislature requires that every 3 years we develop a plan, and this is the year for that plan to be developed. Our plan is a comprehensive plan that involves stakeholders from across the district, parents, teachers, AIG teachers came together to talk about what needed to be in the plan, and the focal points of the plan are as follows. We have a criteria by which we identify students that are AIG. We provide services, practices, strategies for the students that are identified. We try to provide a rigorous and relevant curriculum for our AIG students. We recruit and retain highly qualified professionals to teach AIG students. We continuously engage stakeholders in the planning and implementation process, and then we monitor what we do. Jennifer Smith is our AIG specialist, and she is here tonight. Once you approve this document and sign it, we will submit it to the state board. has to be there by July 15th, and they will give us comments and feedback on our plan.
And board members, this plan is kind of is a living document. I mean, there could be some down the road, there could be some things, talking to Ms. Smith for the meeting as well. The big thing we need to, and Ms. Smith said, you've had good feedback already from DPI, they've already looked at it, and, so, this is a big issue for us as we continue to look. You know, we're talking about kids at all levels of performance growing from where they are. Well, continue to look for opportunities for children to have some additional rigor, and that's what the IG plan, in my opinion, is after, opportunities for everybody to grow to.
Are there any questions?
What kind of checks and balances do we have on the acceptance of a student into the AIG plan as far as, I know we have the parameters that meet some of that, but at the various schools, is there more than one person that actually looks at this at the
COGAT
Huh?
test, right, the third grade?
Excuse me?
The third grade COGAT test decides it, right, just that number.
Jennifer?
Is that, I think it's just that number.
That's it?
That's, yeah, that's what I thought.
Well, there is an alternative assessment when a student does not meet the criteria on the COGAT. We can go further than that if the committee determines, in the school, if a committee determines that we need to continue to look. We have lots of children that are talented in ways other than reading and math. And so one of the things that we are working hard towards is talent development and trying to see all the areas in which students are gifted and talented.
Okay.
But in response to your question, there's a committee at each school that looks into this, I guess reviews every situation.
Ms. Smith actually goes into school. She and I have done some school visits together this year to look at students who have presented as intellectually gifted students.
So, I got a question to piggyback on Fred. So, the COGAT, that's what I thought, the third grade assessment. So, you have some kids that maybe have had a tough life, if you will, tough time, coming up. And maybe on their COGAT test, they don't score that well, but, who knows what's been going on in their life up until that point. How hard is it for you to look at that kid in the 8th grade or something? So now they've got say they had an unstable home, and now they got a stable home, and now they're performing well. You guys actively look at those kids to try to look at kids that are excelling, because, you may have a kid that had like I said, a lot going on there that wouldn't prepare, missing school, maybe family life, things out of their control, but y'all continue to look at them again? Because I know the third grade assessment, is there another time in middle school where you start trying to look at them again, or is it not really? Because every kid doesn't have the perfect, upbringing there.
Right. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Biggs, and there can be some alternative testing done. I think the beauty of high school is that it doesn't matter whether you're designated as AIG or not.
Yeah.
If you're willing to do the work in an AP class, you can be in an AP class. If you're willing to do the work in an honors class, you can be in that class.
So really, there's not a real testing until when you get into high school where you kind of separate yourself again after the third grade. I mean, really.
Well, you don't have to separate yourself in high school. It's about who's willing to do the work. I think that we need to look at every kid to see what their potential is, not what the score on the paper says at that point.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Yes, we do. We do test again at 5th grade.
That's a real point of pride in this county, not all counties.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I'm sitting here thinking, Ms. Smith's back there thinking, which one of those board members was AIG? And she struggled with that.
I think it's easier for her to tell which one was it.
Yes. Damn, I just got hit with that.
Yeah, little Gary.
Yes, that's it.
Early on, he said little Gary was struggling.
Little Gary gave it away, didn't he? Ryan knew a lot about it, though. Were you gifted?
Might have been.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve the Hanover County School System academically, intellectually gifted AIG plan for 2022-2025.
So moved.
Have a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
You're pretty good on some stuff, Fred. Okay, world famous Mr. Brinkley. I need the kids' names.
That's what happened.
Okay, good evening, board members. Tonight, we bring you a recommendation to approve a pay increase for classified staff members in the school nutrition department. The school nutrition department is proposing an increase of 6.2 to 9.4% for all school-based school nutrition classified employees, including school nutrition assistants, nutrition assistant managers, and nutrition managers. In addition, the school nutrition department is proposing a 5% increase for all school nutrition central service support staff. This increase will help prevent the compression in the salary schedule once the $15 minimum or 2.5% increase is passed in the 22-23 budget. And I know an additional percentage was sent to the governor. Kelly has evaluated the additional percentage against the budget, and she's prepared to meet that percentage increase if needed. The total annual cost of this increase would be $340,000, including matching FICA and retirement. This cost will be funded solely by the school nutrition budget and will become effective August 1. Total annual cost does not include the budget impact of the state's action with regard to the $15 hour minimum or 2.5% increase standard. Nonetheless, the total annual cost caused by the state action also will be funded by the school nutrition budget. The new pay adjustment will allow the nutrition department to better retain current employees, recruit for current vacant positions, and remain competitive with surrounding school systems. And I want to thank Kelly for her diligence in the management of the school nutrition budget and for her preparing the details for this recommendation. Kelly and I will be glad to answer any questions you may have about the recommendation.
I just got a statement. I am so happy with this, and I don't want to say just me. I know every board member has wanted to raise for these folks. I've heard from every board member, and it's well overdue. And I wish we could do more and continue to look to do more. And thank y'all for bringing it to us.
How many openings do you have, like, right now, compared to like last year, just for curiosity?
32 right now. I hovered at 30 about all year. So to reference, when COVID hit in March, we had 9. So
Hopefully this will help.
I had to turn this application
So-
in, so.
On top of the 5 to 9.4, it'd be 2.5 come fall. Is that right?
Yeah, once the state budget is.
Right, yeah.
So the range, once the state kicks in, the range will actually be, if the state does 2.5,
Be tomorrow.
which we heard last night, it may not be 2.5.
Pass tomorrow.
Yes, it is.
So
So the bottom range will be 8.4 with Kelly's and the state's, and the high end of that will be 11.9 with Kelly's and the state's.
Okay.
At the 2.5. If it's 4, then it increases, so.
And again, all that would be funded by the school nutrition budget.
And I concur with Mr. Brinkley in the planning. Kelly and Mr. Brinkley and I met last week and just was really impressed, and the questions that were raised were answered, and with a lot of good research and a lot of good analysis have been done in her budget. And I want to remind you that everything gets paid out of her budget, even whatever the state does comes out of Kelly's money. And so this is, for her to be in this position with the management of this budget is really, really good. And so excited for these employees, and we'll keep looking to see if there's something we can do otherwise, or in addition for other employees in the coming weeks.
That's great.
And it goes into effect
August 1.
August 1.
You can change the free review, the lunch, is that still like it was when we voted
No,
Nothing's
there's,
changed or?
Summer pass.
Kelly, there's a ruling there, the ruling came out that it's not gonna be free to everybody, it's going back to the rules we had, now we've got the, debate over the, reduced price lunch right now, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm thinking that might be more of a state issue at this point, since the federal, and Biden signed this past weekend that they would not approve to pay for the, reduced copay that students pay, so that 40 cents for lunch.
When the kid when the child pays 40, the balance of that is what's in limbo right now. So let's hope the state steps in, because that could be a big thing for children. But to your answer, the original, the free across the board is done as of the end of the summer.
And do you have a number on how many people signed up for summer?
For like community feeding, numbers are very low.
Okay,
Very low.
I was wondering that.
Most of what we're feeding is through the reading camp right now. And so that will end tomorrow.
And now the end, okay, that's what I figured.
All right, thank you. I need a motion. Need a motion to approve the pay increase for classified staff members in the school nutrition department.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I need to do one vote against that one with you. Thank you. I thought you did. Thank you, Mr. Brinkley. That sounds good.
We can spend Kelly's money on that.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Biggs.
I move that the Randolph County Board of Education will enter a closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute to preserve the attorney-client privilege, to discuss confidential personnel matters protected by North Carolina General Statute, and to discuss confidential student matters if needed, protected by FERPA.
All right, we have the motion. Have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're in closed session.
We on?
We're good. Okay, need a motion to approve administrative appointments.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Need a motion to approve the administrative transfer.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I voted.
That's it, isn't it? Why'd you put this in? You did. You tried to mess with me, didn't you?
Oh, I picked the wrong word, adjourn.
Yes, he did. We need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Can we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Look at this, he tried to trick me
I'm
tonight.
glad Dr. Gaines
Check
right
that
shit
out.
out.
Look what he tried to pull fast.